This week on Poetry, Passion, and Pleasure podcast, we are going to look at two critical attitudinal stances that we can take in the world. Now, the first one that I'll talk about, I find that I take far too often, and the second I am trying to take much more often. Let me explain. And of course, we've got some poems for this as well. The first I would describe as simply the oh no. That stance in the world is, oh no, why is this happening? Oh no, why is this happening in the world or to me? So that's one stance. And I find that quite familiar, too familiar. The second is to say two other words internally, or the stance, the attitudinal stance we take. And those words are even so. Even so, this is occurring. Even so, this has happened in the world, or is happening in the world, or is happening to ourselves. Even so, we're going to step into the world in a way which has strength and dignity and all of the above. So I've chosen two poems today on this theme. And really, the title of this week's podcast is Honoring Both Pain and Joy. And in essence, that's really, I think, what we have to do, because when there are difficult things happening in the world, it's not to deny those, but it's also critical, I think, even more critical these days with our ecological meta crisis, with our political crisis, with all these different social, political, ecological crises happening, that we can both appreciate the beauty and joy in our lives and gain strength from it and not shy away from the difficulty and the sadness, nor to delude ourselves that difficult things are not occurring. So, this first poem is actually called, the title of the podcast this week, it's called Honoring Both Pain and Joy. And I think the point is right in the sweet spot of what we're talking about. So, honoring both pain and joy, it goes like this: listen, listen, listen. Feelings float freely. Listen, feelings float freely, and moods can be so many. Joy makes its home with grief. Joy makes its home with grief. The deeper the water, that cool, sweet water, all rivers lead here. All rivers lead here, right here, where the black, swirling magic carves sacred homes that hold our souls so tenderly. How are you today, my dearest heart? How are you today, my dearest heart? Just say it. Just say it. I am many ways. Just say it. I am many ways. Sometimes, sometimes we need not choose. I am many ways. I am many ways. Just say it. Sometimes we need not choose. I think that poetry, if it does anything, I think it can often be brilliant at naming and honoring and celebrating joy and all the joyful emotions and beauty and experiences that we have, particularly and often in the natural world, and also, of course, in relationships with loved ones and friends. All of that, joyful, joyful. And also, poetry, I think, is brilliant at owning, stepping into difficulty, into grief, into sadness, into disappointment, even into despair at times, even into despair. And so this poem, honoring both pain and joy, was a little piece that came to me earlier this year where I was thinking about often we feel some kind of pressure to be a kind of either or, to be linear. Either it's a yes or a no. And quite often, I don't know about you, but I often do not feel in that kind of yes no position. I don't feel categorical, in other words. I feel like there are many joyful, beautiful things in my life, and there are also difficult, despairing, hard, grieving things in my life as well. And I think it's important to deny neither, to accept both, to celebrate, and to also um, allow ourselves to feel more fully the difficulty and the grief and the sadness. Okay, so the second poem is called Despite the Catastrophes. And again, we're talking about this same kind of theme of being able to work with difficult situations, but not have ourselves be blinded to the beauty, to the joy, to the absolute incredible, amazing miracles that are all around us. And yeah, this poem is called Despite the Catastrophes. And it goes like this. Some mornings, despite the catastrophes, we wake up shining. Some mornings, despite the catastrophes, we wake up shining. It's not like we don't remember our anxiety attacks and self doubts, the meta crisis, global heating, forever chemicals in breast milk, demagogues, microplastics everywhere, uncountable extinctions, falling sperm counts, and that nuclear doomsday clock just ticking away. Now, that's quite a list, isn't it? And all of those things, I don't know about you, but I'm seeing even some of the more measured publications these days are talking about these difficulties that I've listed in the first part of this poem. And it will be balanced by the second part, as you'll see in just a moment, as I hope we'll both see. But even people who have not really been um, talking about some of these difficulties, I find that there's so many people that are. And this is the catastrophic part of what we're living through. And yet, if we can't balance with joy, with beauty, then we will not be able to take steps, any steps that may be able to move us toward um, a place, a life, a culture, a political reality that serves us in this time of meta crisis. So, again, the first few lines, and then we'll finish the poem. Despite the catastrophes, some mornings, despite the catastrophes, we wake up shining. It's not like we don't remember our anxiety attacks and self doubts, the meta crisis, global heating, forever chemicals in breast milk, demagogues, microplastics everywhere, uncountable extinctions, falling sperm counts, and that nuclear doomsday clock just ticking away. But still, but still, but still, our lips, they begin to whistle, and all on their own, and by those scariest graveyards too. But then we realize we don't have to do that anymore, even though we are as afraid as ever. Bring it on, they say. Bring it on, they say. Face what scares you, they say. It's not the thing you fear, but the mother of the thing you fear. they say. Life is just about as hard as we make it anyway. And besides, sometimes the guard falls asleep and the key to our jail cell just plops right out of our own coat pocket. It's called getting up on the right side of the bed or close enough. It's called even so. There is stunning beauty. It's called even so. There is stunning beauty. It's called Let's All Stay a Cosmically Cheap Date. So easily impressed, just letting the universe sing and sing while our bodies lift right off the ground and nearly float away. Well, there's some of my favorite lines and ideas. This is another poem I wrote earlier this year. Um, this idea that we turn and face the shadow, we turn and face our fears. I say in the poem, bring it on, they say. Face what scares you, they say. It's not the thing you fear, but the mother of the thing you fear. Always love that. Life is just about as hard as we make it anyway. And besides, sometimes the guard falls asleep and the key to our jail cell just plops right out of our own coat pocket. It's called getting up on the right side of the bed or close enough. It's called even so. Even so. Even so. There is stunning beauty. Back to that even so versus oh no. Even so. There is stunning beauty. It's called Let's All Stay a Cosmically Cheap Date. So easily impressed. Just letting the universe sing and sing while our bodies lift right off the ground and nearly float away and nearly float away. One of the things that my wife and I kid each other about often is we say we want to stay cheap dates in the world. And what we mean by that is that we want to stay impressed with a beautiful taste of some food, a sip of wine, to glance out the window and see um, a beautiful landscape, to see one flower, to taste a tomato in August. All those things, you know, to stay a cheap date in the universe is the way I like to, and we like to say it. So easily impressed. And so, the theme of this episode is despite, despite the catastrophes, and as we were saying, to be able to say, even so, even though these things are so, we're not going to deny them. We're not going to delude ourselves. We're not going to try to hide from the difficulties, but even so, there is beauty. Even so, there is amazing joy. Even so, all of that other um, wonderfulness is part of our lives if we can step into it and not just catch ourselves going, oh no, all the time. Why is this happening? Or why is this happening to me? Not do that as much. Even not doing that once a day. If we do it 20 times a day, let's try to do it 19. And maybe that on that one time we can go even so and just step into the joy and the beauty of things. Okay. Thank you so much. That's a wrap for this week. Thank you so much for your listening ear. Like I always say, make a comment, like the video if you're looking on YouTube or one of the other podcast platforms. All that stuff, and refer it to friends if you're so inclined. And until next time and next poems, please take good care of yourself. And as I always like to say, someone else as well. Thank you so much.